Welcome to another CEO Wisdom podcast. We have Jeff Barnes with us. He helps you raise capital for investing, buying businesses, and helped at least, I would guess 50 to 100 people do 100 billion plus in transactions, which is quite a lot. He's CEO at Angel Investors Network, founder at Digital Evolution Marketing Group, not his first business. We're going to talk about his businesses, his background, and everything between. This podcast is brought to you by podpar.com. If you want to start, scale, monetize your podcast, you can go to podpar.com. Jeff, aka JB, welcome to the podcast. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Thanks, Charles. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me here. So my journey is a little bit unique. I didn't go in a straight line to where I am. I started my career running a nuclear power plant on a submarine a long time ago, hence a lot of the Navy stuff behind me here. And went from there into financial services and risk management consulting. I dabbled with investing in real estate. I became a financial planner along the way. I've done a lot of different things, ultimately landing on helping companies raise capital because it became something that I learned how to do over the years by investing in, from a corporate level, investing in startups and mid-stage companies that we're either partnering with, investing in, or acquiring to scale up in the Fortune 500 landscape. And we did that a lot, partnering with accelerators and incubators and so on. And I found a really, strong need with a lot of people because they didn't understand the process of raising capital, how to pitch investors properly, how to follow up and close the deals and so on. So that's what we spend a lot of time doing. I raise capital myself for our own companies as well as funds. And then we help a number of people through our programs, our membership, our coaching, our live events, and of course, one-on-one consulting.
One of the first experiences that caught my eye is Stop Childhood Obesity. Tell me a bit more about that one.
Oh man, that was a long, long time ago. So I back in 2006, I had just gotten out of the Navy, and I was trying to figure out, okay, what do I really want to do with my life now that I'm not in the military anymore? And I was working for a big company, and I never really wanted to do that. So I figured, okay, well, I was starting to see all these obese kids, and it was driving me nuts. It didn't make sense to me. And at the time, I was only 24, 25 years old. I just got through the military, and I was in charge of athletics in our boat. And I couldn't understand how kids were getting fat. Now, I wrote a book, but I never published it because I got to this point. I said, what's the point of me publishing a book about keeping your kids healthy when I don't even have kids at the time? Since then, I've had two boys. They are now 11 and 12 years old. And I have essentially put all of this stuff in motion with my children, which is, you start from a very early age with making sure that they're not going to learn and understand the stuff, but you just start getting them into the habits of doing things. And then as they get older, you start explaining why we do things. And my kids are healthy and strong and growing, crazy fast right now. And it is a challenge for a lot of people I've seen that, pouring energy and attention into their own health and well-being is challenging, but trying to instill good habits in their children from an early age seems almost insurmountable for a lot of people. Right? A lot of people are dealing with their own crises every single day. And as a result, they're just grabbing whatever's available at the supermarket or the drive-through, not caring about what the nutritional content is because they believe that the powers that be are doing the right thing by putting this in the grocery stores in the first place, and they're not. And so by the time the kids get to a point where they're unhealthy, they're out of shape, they're obese. I mean, we have 1 out of every 3 kids right now is considered obese. It's terrible. It's going to be 1 out of every 2 in the coming decades. And childhood obesity is scaling massively, childhood diabetes. We're all of a sudden starting to see kids that are having autoimmune disorders that they've never had before in their lives. Myocarditis and cardiovascular issues. There's a whole host of reasons why this is happening, but it really comes down to what is their quality of life like at home. And since parents are in control of that, it's not really the kids' fault. The parents need to be better educated and take this on as their own responsibility. And I know it's already hard enough raising kids, but raising healthy kids should be your goal. And I say my number one goal as a father is when my children leave home at the age of 18 or whenever they leave, which in my house, it'll be 18. They won't want to live with me past 18 because they'll be put to work. But once they leave the home, they need to be able to think for themselves, and they need to be able to have accurate thoughts. And that accurate thought is really important because I don't want them to just regurgitate whatever they see on TV or hear from their friends. So we have to start instilling good habits from the very beginning.
Yeah, I love that. Love what you're saying. One thing that I see here in Mexico is that in poor neighborhoods, the foods that they have at the supermarket is broken food. It's junk food, even at the grocery store, imagine. So it's like the cheapest stuff that people can afford, right? So sort of toxic to have that in societies. And I think there's companies like Whole Foods that are trying to change that in the US. The second thought that I had is that, yes, parents are overwhelmed. They don't have time to cook food for their children, and also most are broke, right? They're wrestling against the race to wealth. And yeah, it's sort of hard to feed your children's good food. And even if they would feed them junk food, they could have them do sports, right? But sport is not something natural for most humans. It's, like people still wonder why there's cancers and all these heart disease, diabetes, and so forth. But most people don't move their body on a daily basis. Plus, they're stressed the hell out. So, yeah, all valid points that you made here. Last but not least, the 18-year-old thing. Yeah, I wanted to leave house earlier in life, but I couldn't. My parents were great, but I feel that if I would have discovered entrepreneurship before and launched my business as a kid or a teenager, it would have been a different life for me. So what kind of path do you have for your own children? Do you teach them entrepreneurship? And how do you want to make them independently wealthy on their own by the time they leave the house?
Well, let's unpack that a little bit and let's talk about some of the struggles that really make somebody successful in life. And I would say that the fact is that struggle is a part of life, and it's those struggles that we go through who make us who we end up becoming, right? If we don't struggle, then we don't build up resilience and grit and the ability to sustain a livelihood over the course of decades. And if you look at some of the most successful people, they did not come from a wealthy background. I have no intention of making my kids wealthy. In fact, my goal is to make my kids' life a little bit challenging. Not like, dirt floor poor and kick them out on the street kind of homeless challenging, nothing like that. But building up mental fortitude so that they can eventually overcome whatever obstacles life puts in their way. I don't need to put the obstacles in their way. Life will do this for them. But if they leave this house without the tools and the skills to overcome whatever those challenges are, then they're going to be set up for failure. And one of the ways you can set up a child up for failure faster than anything else is give them everything they want, right? These kids and I live in a pretty nice area, and these kids, they get their select leagues and they have all the gear for every sport they play, and they have, safest neighborhoods you could possibly go to. It's kind of ridiculous when I look at it from my background, which was growing up in Los Angeles and eventually being homeless, to what my kids have today. It's completely different. But I also see that if I don't challenge them and they just continue to live this incredible life that they have, they will not be ready for the trials and tribulations that come in the real world. So I have to create some challenges for them. And we do that by imposing limitations on all the fun things that they want to do. And we make it so that if my children want to do something like play the Xbox, if they want to have a sleepover at somebody's house, if they want to go to a party, they want to have a party, they want to do all these really fun things that they want to do, they have to earn it. Well, we all remember doing chores as kids, and if in some houses you got an allowance, we don't do allowances in our house. What we actually created is a ledger, right? So I actually have a list of all the chores that my kids can do, and it's inside this ledger, and it says, okay, if you cut the grass, it's $5. If you take out the trash and bring it back in, then it's $3, things like that. And clean your room and do the laundry and clean the bathrooms and all the stuff that requires for a household to run. And so they can earn money. And then they have a list over here of all the little things they can do, like playing Xbox for a few hours and doing a sleepover, or going to Dave and Buster's, one of the arcades, doing all these, going bowling, the stuff that they really want to do that costs money. So, okay, I've got to do these many chores to make this money so I can pay for this. And I say, oh, but wait, there's a catch. Since you live under my roof, you have to pay rent. So 10% of everything you make goes towards paying rent. So we're kind of building up that mindset of, oh, I don't just, if I earn $5, I don't get $5. I have to take 10% off and it goes to rent. So, oh, and guess what? There's also this thing called taxes. So you have to pay taxes, and taxes are for me because I'm feeding you, right? So you're gonna pay an extra 10% in taxes. And then the last 10% is you also need to put money into savings. So 10% of everything you earn goes into savings. And that idea comes from the richest man in Babylon, which is 10% of everything you earn is yours to keep. And if you get into the saver's mindset, right, we already know we live in a world where, as Benjamin Franklin said, nothing is certain in life but death and taxes. And the government's always going to ask for taxes. So if you get used to the fact from a very early age that everything you make is not yours to keep and you have to give some of it away, but you need to keep a portion of it for yourself, eventually you're going to start building this mindset of, okay, it costs to live, it costs money to be fed, it costs money to do the things I want to do, and I should always be saving for that rainy day. And once you start saving, investment opportunities come around, right? And so it's building, again, going back to that mindset, it's building the mindset. And I can't teach a kid these principles when they're 7 years old or 10 years old. But what I can do is I can start putting habits in place. And over time, those habits build. And eventually they start understanding why it's happening, right? So that's kind of the way we go about it in this house.
The tax thing is interesting. A lot of wealthy people optimize their tax, and since they live in many parts of the world, doesn't make any sense for them to pay for roads they don't use or stuff like that. But yeah, it's quite interesting. What about entrepreneurship and starting their little lemon stand and teaching them to work for their hard-earned money?
Yeah, it's funny. So their mom is a small business owner. I set up that business years ago. We got divorced, but their mom's a business owner. My wife is a business owner. I'm a business owner, obviously. And so they get to see this. And so it's almost like via osmosis, they just see being a business owner is the thing to do. But along the way, we're teaching them technology. How do you use AI? Like, what are the tools that they need to start learning today so that in 10, 20 years from now, they can be successful? Well, there's all these bleeding edge technologies that they're learning a little bit about. And I'm trying to keep them from wanting to be a TikTok or a YouTube influencer because for some reason, that's all that little kids want these days. It's not being a president anymore. It's being the TikTok influencer. So we got to start teaching them skills. The more skill, again, going back to the ledger, if you learn the skill and you can show me you learn it, you're going to get paid. So great. Now I'm going to go learn the skill. And the skill can get you a job. That's one thing. But being a business owner is a mindset thing, right? Becoming an entrepreneur is a mindset thing. So you have to learn how to sell. You have to learn how to do marketing and advertising. You have to learn how to manage your money. Like most people just want a job where it's like, I just need to learn the one skill. I go to work, I get my money, I go home. I don't have to think about it, right? But when you start showing them the difference, again, teaching them entrepreneurship versus showing them the difference between having a 9-to-5 job where you're working 40 hours a week and you're capped at a certain level versus here's the opportunities that are available to you if you learn how to take advantage of them. And this is what you get if you learn how to do that. It's seeing the difference, right? It's seeing the stark contrast. And so when they start to see that being reflected in their lives, they can start to understand, okay, this entrepreneurship route is kind of cool, but along the ways they have to learn the different skills. So financial management is one of those, right? So just by learning financial management, they can start to learn how to be a business owner by seeing how, your time is structured. Like most people think, okay, most people are not the business owners who work in a job and they work for somebody who they think is a really rich business owner. They think that the business owner doesn't work that hard versus the business owner is really working 10, 12, 14 hours a day sometimes, not just 5 days a week, but sometimes 7 days a week to make sure that payroll is made, to make sure that the doors stay open, to make sure the advertising campaigns are working, make sure everything's happening properly. So they get to see that, right? And then they get to make the choice at the end of the day, what they're going to do. And I have to reiterate that. I can't reiterate that strongly enough, which is what they do with their life is not up to me. But preparing them for what they can do with their life is important. So I have to start teaching them the skills and showing them the abilities. And then, of course, we talk about, wouldn't it be cool if you owned your own ATM, right? Well, what does that mean? Well, an ATM is a thing that spits out money. Well, how do you get it to spit out money? Well, you go find the thing that people want to put money into so you can take the money out, right? So we even talk about like vending machine businesses, and we've talked to them about that. We talked to them about setting up their own e-commerce store, setting up a software online that they just have to learn how to do this, right? And by virtue of them learning these things and getting exposed to more and more, eventually they say, okay, now I feel like I can move in this direction and do that. Right. So that's the goal.
And you recommend them to raise capital, or is it possible to bootstrap a business?
Oh, we focus almost 100% on bootstrapping a business wherever possible. Raising capital is, in the rookie's mind, raising capital is the thing that's going to set them free. Versus the pro who's been around, raising capital is more of an insurance policy, right? And what I mean by that is that first-time entrepreneurs think the very first thing they need to do is come up with an idea and go raise capital. And worst idea you can have. Because if you are raising capital on an idea, then the challenge of raising capital is nearly insurmountable, right? If you're a first-time entrepreneur with a great idea, every investor, myself included, is going to look at you and say, great, prove to me that it's a great idea. Don't tell me it's a great idea, prove it to me. How do you prove it? You get sales, right? You get people to actually pay for your idea. And most people don't want to do that because sales is scary. Well, if I just raise the money, I can go hire a salesperson. No, you got to go through this again, trials and tribulations. Versus the person who's run several businesses, has exited some, has made some money, and now wants to start the next thing up. They don't start by raising money. They will put their own money into it. In fact, I talked to these two guys, both of them had 8-figure exits. They're set for life. They don't need to run a business ever again. They're in their early 30s. And they're like, we're going to go do this new cool AI thing because we like it, we want to. And they put $2.5 million of their own money into it before they even consider going out for capital, right? And the reason they do that is because they know full well that they have to prove themselves to the market before somebody's going to put money into them. And so the insurance policy of raising money is, if I go out there and raise money, that's just going to really help me accelerate my growth, but it's not necessary for me to grow my business. And that's the way I feel that every entrepreneur should really approach businesses. It's not, raising capital isn't the silver bullet, right? It's not the magic button that you click and all of a sudden it's going to work out. Because sometimes it's 10 times harder to raise capital than it is to just go sell your product. But if you can't sell your product, you'll never raise capital.
Tell me about your clients. What kind of challenges do they face, and what industries are they in, and how do you acquire them?
So my clients are in practically every industry you can imagine. I've had everything from small businesses that are, selling print on demand products, or they have a little retail shop, to chiropractic and functional medicine practices, all the way up to waste to energy treatment facilities and AI companies and technology. So we get clients from all over the place, and we get it because we have a recognizable brand that's been around for 27 years. People find us online. I speak at events. I do podcasts like this, and people reach out to us. We have quizzes on our website, and people can go take a quiz to find out if they're ready to raise capital and so on. And that's how we get our clients in. Of course, we have our training programs that we help people learn the process of raising capital. And then we have our coaching programs. And then eventually we have our platform where people can raise capital. So people come to us from all over the world. We focus primarily in North America, mostly in the United States, just because that's where the vast majority of people are coming to us from. And it's a lot easier because we understand the rules and regulations therein. But when people come to us, what they're hoping for is that we're just going to write a check and invest in them. And as you could probably guess, we don't do that, right? Our job is to show people how to raise capital and be successful with it. Of course, we build up a network and we have events and we introduce people to investors, but that's a small percentage. Most people are not ready to raise capital, believe it or not.
Tell me a bit more about the podcast, your strategy behind it. Who do you invite on? Is it cold outreach, and the results that you have gotten from it so far?
Yeah, so Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions is all about interviewing people that have been successful with either raising money, scaling a business, acquiring businesses, or exiting businesses. And the idea is for people to understand the process behind that. And so we've had people that have had 8-9-figure exits. We've had people that have raised millions and millions of dollars in a very short period of time. We've had people that have acquired businesses and as a result changed their lives. Entrepreneurship through acquisition. That would actually be where I would suggest most people spend their time if they want to be an entrepreneur, is look at how do you acquire a business versus start one from the ground up. People come to us because we have a really vast referral network. We do our own events. Of course, I'm active on LinkedIn as well. So we reach out to people that we want to have on the podcast via LinkedIn and so on. And it's really just more training, education, awareness for a lot of people, and helping some of the folks that come onto our podcast to get a little bit more awareness about what they're doing too.
Nowadays, I'm using AI to filter my guests on the pod, which is pretty powerful. I'm also using AI to pre-send them questions on the pod, which is quite fascinating. I'm also very much into books. I launched this company called bookwritegpt.com. Tell me about the impacts that your book had on your career so far.
Yeah, writing a book is a great way to develop expert status. And I think that's the most important thing that comes out of it is it's not the book sales, unless you're really trying to be, the next Ayn Rand or J.R.R. Tolkien or, someone like that, then you're really focusing on writing something that's going to get you the notoriety, the expert status that you need to scale your business. And so that's what we focused on when writing my book was what can we do that's going to get people to want to work with us? Well, in the business that I'm in, if you're not an expert, then why would somebody hire you? And so that's what writing a book has done for me. It's allowed me to say, okay, I am the expert in this space. Raising money for self-directed investments was the first one, right? So the ultimate guide to self-directed investing and retirement planning. And as a result, people go, oh, this person knows what they're talking about. So as a result, I should do business with them versus the next guy in line who may have the exact same credentials, but doesn't have a book published, right? So that's why somebody would write a book. And I think it's really important that you understand what the goal is of the book afterwards. It's not to sell copies of the book. I've given away more copies of the book than I've sold because I give it away to people who come into our programs or who come to our events or people who come on our podcast. And the goal is to build up that expert status and use that expert status to leverage that into sales and opportunities.
So I want to get your feedback on three book-related growth strategies. The first is scraping all your LinkedIn posts and making a book out of this, which is kind of standard. The second is interviewing people like you on a podcast and take their knowledge and making a book out of it. And the third is cold emailing people like you that might not have time to come on a podcast. They respond to that email. You take that knowledge and you make a book of like 100 CEO insights. What do you think of these?
Yeah, I think those are all really good strategies for putting stuff together. I think, again, it comes back to what is the goal that you have at the end of the day. And if the goal is for you to be seen as the expert, then it should be your information, your knowledge, right? Because that way you are promoting yourself as the expert in a space. If the goal is simply to have a book published so that you can say you're a published author and use their information, that's another thing. However, I always suggest that people give credit where credit is due and say, hey, this, I learned this from this person. And what it allows you to do is you almost become like the Malcolm Gladwell, right? Who's written several books, Outliers and Flyboys and, the big Michael Lewis who wrote the Big Short, right? What do? They interviewed a whole bunch of people. They captured a lot of information and then they put it into a story format. So that gets them, again, expert status, gets them interviewed on different shows and things like that. Simon Sinek, same thing. That's what he did. Leveraged his relationships and interviewing people and paying attention to gather information and resource from other people, put it into a book, launched his entire career, right? So those are definitely great strategies for putting it together. It's, again, what's the goal? And then if you're really clear on your goal, you can say, okay, these are the only types of people I'm going to focus on for interviewing and getting data from.
I also need your feedback on two AI outreach strategies. The first one is on the startup side. Should they take a list of, let's say, 10,000 VCs, use AI to filter it down to 1,000 and email these VCs to mention why they'd be a specific fit for an investment, and vice versa? Should VCs filter down a list of, let's say, 5,000 YC companies, filter it down to 1,000 with AI, and send them an email saying why they'd be good investment partners in them?
Yeah, I think there's merit in both of those. Cold outreach still works. You're prospecting, right? And it's more important that you prospect properly and you open the door to a relationship rather than open the door with, here's why I think you should invest in me. I don't think anything's going to turn off most companies, VCs, private equity fund managers, angel investors faster than saying, I know you don't know me, but here's why you should invest in me. It's more important to open the door to a relationship and then you feel it out and you say, okay, I think there'd be a really good fit here. Let's go ahead and have a conversation. So the outreach tool doesn't really matter, right? At the end of the day, it's agnostic. It could be email, it could be text message, it could be phone call, it could be, direct mail. You're sending a postcard, you're sending a package. You could do targeted advertising campaigns, but at the end of the day, it goes back to what's the goal and the purpose of doing this. And if you find out that the best way to reach them is email, then absolutely reach out. But just know that there's a process to get people to eventually say, yes, let's invest, or let's have a conversation about investing.
Yeah, an approach that I've been trying lately, I mean, it's still somewhat hard to establish trust from a cold email, but it's like a quick intro. Let's say I take all my LinkedIn posts and I take all your LinkedIn posts, and then I mention the overlaps. Hey, we both talk about the importance of grit in startups, for example, as an email opener. That may work, but is asking them on a podcast like I'm doing right now a better intro, a better like warm intro, and then asking them if they'd be good investors? What do you think?
I think when you invite somebody to share their information, they're much more willing to do that than anything else, right? And you have to find a way to parlay that into the next step of a relationship. It's kind of like asking a girl on a date. You don't ask her out on the date and then ask her to marry you the first moment you meet her. You ask them to come to a place because, like, oh, I saw that you like this kind of thing and I like this kind of thing together. Maybe we should go check out this concert together, right? And then after you get done with the concert, you get to learn and know each other a lot more. And then you figure out what that next step is from there. But it's generally not marriage, right? And so, again, it's all about building up relationships. And that's the thing with raising capital. It's relationships more than it is anything else. If people don't think that there's going to be a good way for them to succeed in that relationship, then they probably won't invest.
Do you think investment as a vehicle will scale in the long term in the $1 billion company that Sam Altman described? Will this company be VC funded or fully bootstrapped with a bunch of AI agents scaling it?
That's a great question. I think that it's very possible in this day and age to scale a company to 9 figures and beyond with one individual. It's a lot of work, though, right? I mean, at the end of the day, yes, AI is going to take over a lot of different aspects of running a company, but somebody still has to manage that. Somebody's still going to have to be the visionary behind it. And generally speaking, visionaries are also not the doers, right? They are very good at coming up with the ideas, but there's generally another person that's helping implement and get a lot of those things done. So do I think it's possible? Absolutely. Do I think it's likely? No. I think that it's more likely it's still going to be, even if it's a small team. I mean, I see small teams of 3 to 5 people doing 8, 9 figures. That's very, very likely and very possible. However, a single person getting all the way to $1 billion valuation, unless that single person is an Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and they go out there and do it, which again, they wouldn't do it without a team. It's unlikely at this stage.
What are your goals for the remainder of this year, and what habits do you cultivate to reach these goals?
So our goal is we're raising capital into our company, and then we're going to be launching our own fund, a second fund. So this is going to be $100 million fund, and it's going to take 12 months, give or take, for us to do that. What do I do? Well, we focus on being grateful. We focus on gratitude and what we have right now, and how great things are in our world, even though it can seem like the world is going to hell around you. If you buy into all the negativity out there, you'll never achieve your own goals. And so we focus on being excited for the future, being grateful for what we have, and always driving forward every single day, doing at least one thing that's going to move that needle forward. And if you're not doing at least one thing every single day that's going to move you in the direction of your goals, then you will never achieve your goals.
As an ex-defense guy, do you think the world's in a good shape? And yeah, what would AGI mean in the context of world turmoil?
There's always going to be propaganda, and there's always going to be noise, and there's always going to be strife in the world. It's no different now than it was 1,000 years ago or 100 years ago. The only difference is how quickly the information moves. And so I think people's number one job is to find a way to ignore the noise and ask constantly, how does this actually affect me? Because there are real places in the world that it does actually affect them, and they have to respond. But most of the time, it's simply propaganda, and it's people trying to promote fear. And if you buy into the fear, then you are doing yourself a major disservice because you're not moving yourself forward. Instead, you're focusing and giving your energy and attention to something that may not even matter.
Word. Jeff, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so the easiest place is on LinkedIn. You can find me on there, Jeff P. Barnes, and then angelinvestorsnetwork.com is our website.
That was Jeff Barnes and Charles Cormier for another CEO